Encaustic Art Studio. Today I'm going to show you how to do a leaf print with encaustic wax. This is a really easy, fun project. It uses fresh leaves, not dried ones. The only problem is it's a little bit addictive and you might end up with quite a few leaf prints like I have. Anyways, I really enjoy making these and I hope you do too. Let's get started. So I have a few panels ready to paint on for the leaf prints, and I'll just show you what I'm using. I have these custom-made 4x4 pine blocks. They're just cut from 2x4s or 2x6s, I'm not sure. My dad cuts them for me and he puts notches on all four sides because usually when I'm painting I'm not paying attention to what side is supposed to be the top. And that works really great for these leaf prints because then you can actually hang them any direction you like. So I'll just show you a couple of examples. I have this one here, and I use framer's tape for the sides once I'm done. So they work really good. You can basically hang it any direction, and just on a nail on the wall they hang nice and flat against the wall, and I'll show you that at the end. So these are just some paintings that sort of didn't work out, and I've covered them with some encaustic paint. This one had some of the color underneath bubble up through the top, so we'll try that and see what it looks like. So I've got a dark one. I think what I'll do is I'm going to make this one lighter and have a dark and a light version. Something along this line, or along this line I should say. So you have sort of the reverse. I think I'll just work on an opposite to this one so that I have a solid color instead of that flat panel. So I'm going to tape this up and you can see the whole process, I guess, start to finish. I like to cover the entire back with tape. It's just a little easier. You want quite a few layers of wax so you can get a good impression of the leaf. And we're going to use fresh leaves for this process, not dried, as I mentioned. So I have a lighter green over here. I'm just going to switch my tin. So I have, actually, just move it over here. There we go. This should work. It's a bit of a blue-green, but that's okay. Not too fussy about a perfect complement, I guess. Besides, I'm going to add some of this in here. Hopefully it will make it harmonious. And this color just came from all my old wax being melted down, and then I strain it through cheesecloth. I really try not to waste it. I just tend to throw anything I scrape off into a tin like this, then I melt it down and clean it up through some cheesecloth so that it can be reused. It's one of the nice things about wax. So I'm going to fuse this every couple of layers, and I'm going to get out as many of the bubbles as I can. This one's going to look hopefully a little bit interesting, and I'll show you one I did with alcohol ink as a base. I'll grab that. I was experimenting with these with alcohol ink, and I like the effect actually. I think it looks really nice, but I also like the plain background as well, so we'll see. Okay, this one was very warm, so I had to let it cool a bit. But yeah, I want a good probably 8 layers at least. I'm gonna keep mixing this up a bit so it's not streaky. One thing when you're applying your encaustic wax, try not to, when it's hot, try not to go over the same spot again, because what will happen is it'll just take it off. So for example, like right here, when I want to do the next layer, I'll start over here, because if I start here again, it'll tend to take off this really warm patch there. And then I'll have to fix it later. And I use a torch. You can use a heat gun, of course, as well. Okay. So I probably got enough on there. I'm just gonna let that cool down for a bit, because it's too warm at this point. This one's got a little air bubble in it, so I'm going to heat it up again and put a couple more layers on it. Some are just more bubbly than others for whatever reason. It's air that's being released from either the wax below or the wood. I know sometimes if I have a very textured piece of that I'm painting over, like this, for example, these trees here, they're very textured with lots of little holes. If I put wax over that and heat it up, the wax tends to trap in these little divots and it will come up, and it can take a while to get rid of, basically. Alright, I think that's cooling off. Okay, so I'm going to throw a couple more coats on there. It won't hurt, actually. I'll go start over here. Okay, that's looking pretty good. When you do your print, you don't want it to be liquid, but you do want it to be fairly warm. This one's cooled off. This one over here is cooled off. This one is very liquid. So I'm gonna let that cool off a bit, and then I'll show you the leaves I'm gonna work with, and we can heat these all up at the same time. Okay, so I have 3 leaves here. I'll just move this guy. And so I have a maple leaf, a mountain ash leaf, and I think this is a birch leaf, or maybe a, oh, I can't think of the name of the tree right now, but anyways, it's from a tree over by the pond. And I picked these a couple of days ago, and then I put them in between 2 pieces of tracing paper, and I put a book on top just so they would be nice and flat, because they work best if they're they're flat, it's a little easier to get them to press. But you want to choose leaves that have a really nice vein pattern on the back, nothing too smooth, because the idea is, actually now that I'm looking at this one, I don't know if we'll get much. Even though it has quite a lot of veins, they don't stick out very much. If you can see or not, I'm not sure. That one might actually be too smooth. These have lots of texture. I mean, you can just work with the shape of the leaf and the stem, that's not a problem. And I think I'll use it anyway, because I do like the shape of it. But yeah, you can see the difference there. It just won't have a lot of texture to pick up the oil rub at the end. Okay, so these have cooled off pretty good. I'm going to warm them up so that we can get a nice impression. I'll probably just do one at a time. Let's start with this middle guy. So like I say, you want it to be soft, but not full on liquid. I think that's pretty close. I'll give it one more. Okay. So I think I will try this mountain ash leaf. So that's pretty warm. I'm just going to press it down with my fingers as best I can to get it to stick. And then what I'm going to do is cover the surface with a piece of tracing paper, just in case I do that. And I'm going to burnish the leaf, because I want it to imprint fairly deep into the wax, especially this stem down here. Oh, one thing, when you do put your leaf on, it's good if you can have a little bit off of the edge. It'll be a lot easier to find it after you paint, because we're going to cover the leaf with a different color. Sometimes it can be hard to pull it out of the wax if it's completely obscured. So I'm mostly just using the back of the spoon. I probably could have even warmed this up a little bit more, but that's pretty good. It seems to be sticking quite well. All right, so I'm going to use this lighter color, and I think I'll probably use a smaller brush for this, just because I don't necessarily want it super thick. And when I start painting, I'm going to start kind of in the middle of the leaf. Don't have to, but in fact, I'll probably start close to the stem here so I can make sure I get that covered. I think I'll start with the small brush for these delicate parts in here, and then maybe switch to the bigger brush. Okay, keep working my way. Yeah, I want to make sure I get right in nice and close to that stem. And I kind of like having the brush marks showing. And you know what, if this doesn't work out, it's okay, you can just cover it up and paint another one. This stem is pretty thick, otherwise I would probably just go over it. I think in this case I'm going to stick to just kind of painting alongside of it. All right, so mine's cooling off. I'm going to switch to this bigger brush just for these last parts. All right, so that actually cooled off quite a bit. I had to pause the video for a second before I was finished covering up the leaf. So I'm just going to give it a really quick fuse. Maybe a little more along the corners where I know there's no leaf, just to smooth it out, although not necessary. In fact, the texture does give a lot of places for the oil rub to show up, so that's warmed up. I'm gonna see if I can pull this out, see what we've got. I think it's coming out pretty good. There. Okay, so I just gonna press some of these little areas down, but I'm going to give that a fuse again. A second, there's something stuck right there. Let's take that off. Okay, I'm not gonna try to smooth it out. I don't really want it smooth anyway, but I do want to make sure these other edges, plus the more I fuse it, if you can see the imprint of the leaf, like the fine little veins, I don't want to lose those, so, but I do want to make sure I've got a good fusing of that top layer of wax. Okay, so what I've been doing with mine is I've been putting a color around the outside. I'm kind of tempted to not do that with this one. I think I'll set it aside and then decide at the end, because I really like the way that turned out. Not sure if you can see all the little lines, but and this, I did pluck this leaf a couple days ago. I'm sure if it was a little bit fresher, I could maybe get a better imprint of some of these tiny veins, but I just didn't have time to paint until today, so that's that one. All right, so we'll try this guy here. And I think because this is kind of a busy sort of background, I'm going to use this plain leaf, which may end up just being the shape versus the maple leaf, and I'll put the maple leaf on that one. So that's the plan. So I'm going to warm this up. And maybe I'll do it a little bit more than before, because that one, it was warm enough, but I think it could have been a bit warmer. And I do have some bubbles coming up because this one was a leaf print that my mom did, but she didn't like it, so she left it for me. Told me I had to keep it forever, and I said no, I'm not keeping a painting that you don't like. So yeah, anyway, that's kind of who my mom is. I'm probably overheating this guy, but I really wanted to get rid of some of these bubbles. Does not seem to want to happen, but I do have, there was like an oil rub under this, so that might be playing into it a little bit. Whatever, it's all good. Now, I think I'm going to try to catch most of it in the sort of plainer area. Okay, come on. Try to press this down. And maybe I'll end this. There's a little bubble there. I'll try to end it there. This one wants to curl up, so let's get this. So when your wax is soft, you got to burnish a little more gently, but oops. Let's go there.
we go. Yes, it's very soft there. So who knows, I might get a good impression of the veins that are there. Okay, that looks pretty good. And I think for this one, I'm going to use this dark green here. Let's move this over. Okay, so let's try this nice dark green here. I think I might add a little bit of this blue ochre to it. I really like those together. And once again, I'm starting from the middle of the leaf. Now see, I forgot my own advice and I really impressed that stem, so we'll have fun finding that in about 2 minutes. So if I had put a bigger brush in my pot, I would probably use a bigger brush for this one. Okay, keep going around this outside. I think I do need a warmer or a bigger brush, just because that will otherwise take a while. I'm gonna let that warm up for a minute. I'm so impatient. You know, you can vary your brush strokes. Come in, you can go across. And you can use transparent paint as well. It doesn't have to be opaque. I just like the look of it when it's a bit more opaque. Okay, I'm gonna warm this up a bit and maybe put a little bit more on there. I don't want it super thick. Okay, let's see what it looks like. What have we got to lose, right? Oh wait, it's got a, yeah, see I can find this pretty good. So let's see how we did. Yeah, I do have some veins there, so that's good. Actually turned out okay. I think this stem would have shown up more, but I can maybe darken this area. That might help. I'll sort of paint around this stem with a little bit more of a dark paint. That might help it show up a little bit better. Oops, I was going to kind of leave those white spots, but didn't happen. Okay, that's not bad. I kind of like that. I think that was a good choice. There are some leaf veins in there. They're just not very many and not very deep. Okay, now for this last one with the maple leaf. Okay, so I'm gonna warm this guy up. And that's pretty soft, so I'm gonna let it cool just a bit. try to sort of do the opposite to this guy. Okay, anyway, had a small distraction in my studio. Just gonna warm this up again. And press the leaf into the warm wax. I'm just going to use my fingers to press it down. Especially that stem. And then I'm going to burnish it with a spoon. Okay, looks pretty good. And it's okay if some of the wax squishes out the sides there, not a problem. All right, let's get some dark paint for over top. And just make sure you get these little bits around the edge. And then I'm gonna give it a quick fuse. Pull the leaf out. There we go. That one's not too bad. Got some nice definition of all the veins, and yeah, so the next step is to do a color around the outside. This one's a little chunky, but I think I'm gonna fuse that one just a bit. Okay. This is where a torch is good because you don't want it to get blown around. A heat gun tends to blow air, of course, so a torch you have a little more control. And there's a bit of leaf stuck there. I'll just pick that up. Okay. All right, I'm just going to do a little border around the outside of these paintings before I finish with an oil rub. So once again, I'm just going to warm it up before I paint on here. And I had some help choosing the colors. So we mixed up one here. I think this will look good on the mountain ash. So let's try it. So I just like to make a little border around the outside. Yeah, I think that color looks good. Oops. And then for this one here, I'm going to try this malachite green. I've been using mostly metallics around the edge, but ooh, that one's nice. We want to have a good contrast. So it shows up. That's definitely a good contrast. Ugh. And for this last one, I'm going to add some of this iridescent glue in here. See what we get. Because it doesn't hurt to experiment. Okay, those look pretty good. I'm going to just scrape a little bit of these ones back because I got a little carried away here. A bit too far for my liking. There. And then I'll fuse that and wait for them to cool and do an oil rub. Okay, so these have cooled off a little bit. So the final step is that we're going to do an oil rub over top of the paintings. And then the oil paint, these are actually what are called R&F pigment sticks. And it's a combination of wax and oil. So they're in like a stick form. They're very soft, but they are more bodied than just like a regular oil paint. You can use regular oil paint as well, but I have some of these that I've just been using. Basically, I used a palette knife to just cut off a little slice of the oil stick, and I'm just saving it in a piece of plastic wrap so I can reuse it. Okay, so of course I put on a glove because that's a lot easier for cleanup, and I think I'll use this red for the maple leaf. One thing to mention is that R&F does have what's called a blending stick. You can put the blending stick over top of the painting before you rub on the color, and that will leave it less likely to actually stain the surface. It might just leave the color in the grooves. I don't think I'm going to use the blending stick, but that is an option. So these tend to get like a skin on the outside, but you can just sort of break it off, and you don't need a lot, just enough. You want to rub it into the, get it right down into the creases. Might have to kind of take a chunk, sort of work it in there, and just spread it around with your fingers. And this is where if you have more texture on the surface of your painting, it will pick it up. So you just rub it in. I'm gonna do this copper color on the maple leaf because it had a nice sort of pink stem on it, so I think this will look good. And sort of work it into all the different valleys. So at that point, after you get it rubbed in, you can rub it off. And this is why you want the surface to be cool, so you don't leave scratches in the wax. Now this did leave a fair bit of color on the leaf print itself, so what you can do is, I tend to use a little bit of this avocado oil. Actually, you know what might work is actually the blending stick. I have some here, but you can use just regular kind of cooking oil. The avocado oil has a higher melting point, but I did have some of the clear blending stick over there, so I'm just going to use some of that to see if it will take off some of the surface staining, which it does. Okay, so that leaves a nice metallic fill on all the lines. I always put all my oil paints in like rags and stuff in a bucket with water, just just to be safe, so nothing spontaneously combusts. Safety Cindy, that's my nickname. All right, so that one, I'll probably rub that one a bit more. This one I think I'm gonna go with a gold. So I have some of the gold pigment stick here, so I'm gonna use that. Oh yeah, that looks nice. Work it right into the this is a very nice one. Might have a little bit of red mixed in from what's on my fingers, but that's okay. I'm actually just gonna pull that right off and get right in there. The one thing to remember is that the oil paint will take a little bit of time to dry. These I felt have been drying pretty quick, but just depends on the color that you use. And I think I'm going to use gold for this one as well, so just because it's easy. I've already got my hand in it. So the more texture you have on your painting, the more the oil stick will pick it up. And I'm going to work some right in there, these little holes. Might as well use them to my advantage. This guy. Oh, yeah. I like that. So you can rub off as much or as little as you want, really. But if you do have trouble getting it off, you can give it a little squirt of avocado oil, whatever cooking oil you might have handy. You don't need a lot. You just find a clean spot of the paper towel. And that helps take off the excess. I try to reuse my gloves as much as possible. All right, so okay, you can see that really picked up the texture in the leaf print, even along the edges, some of these little tiny lines, and those details come out really pretty, I think. So I usually give these one last really quick fuse, and I warm up the edges so I can scrape those off. Some people don't bother to fuse the last layer after putting on an oil rub, but I don't know, I like to do that myself. Especially because I want to heat up the edges anyway, so I can scrape them. Okay. chunky stuff. Some people like to leave the edges more raw, I guess, but I find that if I don't scrape them off, it's just a source where the painting can be damaged, because as the wax cures it gets a little bit brittle, so those uneven edges can sometimes get broken. So I'm just going to scrape them off. I like them nice and smooth. If it starts to get too hard to scrape the edges, you might need to warm it up again. But that's pretty good. And then I take the tape off. Alright, finding the end is always the tricky part. There we go. I mean, really, you don't have to tape your edges, but I like to have them as clean as I can so I can put tape on them. Some people finish their edges before, but these pine blocks are kind of, I don't know, they're just, I just tape them. It's quick and easy, and I think it looks good. Ooh, that guy. And last one. Once I get the tape off, I usually scrape the edges and fuse them again, just because I really like to make sure my edges are really well fused so they don't ever crack, because that's a vulnerable point of the painting, I would say. But, alright, almost done. Okay, there we have it. Okay, so I've ended up with what I think are a pretty nice little set of prints. I'm actually really enjoying this one here with the gold spots, and I'm not sure if you can see how the very delicate veins got picked up by the gold RNF pigment stick, but that actually turned out really nice. I really like the curve of this mountain ash leaf. I'm really glad I pressed the leaves before I tried to print them, so I'm happy with that one. And this one too, it's a little more plain, but I like the red and the bright greeny blue around the edge. So I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. And I did use framer's tape around the edge. I do have another video what I used to tape the edges if you want to take a look at that, and where I just show the product and how I go about taping that. But it works great. It's super quick. You don't have to wait for your edges to dry from painting them, and it gives it a nice matte finish. And with the notches in all four sides, you can basically hang it any direction you like. So yeah, I'm getting quite a collection of these. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them. I'm going to take some of them and kind of play an early Secret Santa and leave some anonymous gifts for my neighbors. I think that will be fun, especially because I did steal a leaf or two from their trees. So it's only fair maybe I can leave them a small gift. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching, and I'm always happy to answer questions. And I have a newsletter. Sign up on my website, cynthiajames.ca. And thanks for watching. Take care.